All passengers bar one on a Colombian jet that shattered on impact in the Caribbean escaped with their lives. The Boeing 737, carrying 121 passengers and 6 crew, split into 3 after attempting a landing at San Andres during a fierce electrical storm. The pilot reported the airliner was struck by lightning shortly before it crashed shy of the runway in heavy wind. The flight from Colombia's capital Bogotá was operated by the privately owned airline Iris. 114 people on board were injured. Medics at the crash site told a local paper that a woman suffered a heart attack just after the accident and died en route to hospital. The Caribbean airport was closed to allow investigators access to the wreckage.
They have seen their country devastated by disaster. They have lost family, friends and their homes. Now these survivors of the Pakistan floods can no longer contain their anger. In Punjab province, hundreds aimed their protests at the government's slow response to the tragedy and the lack of food and vital life-saving medicines. There seems to be no government here since the floods. We have lost our children, our livestock. We can hardly save ourselves. We've come here, but we are getting nothing.
After the heat wave and the wildfires, a cold front has hit northwestern Russia, bringing with it driving rain and high winds. 2 50-metre cranes fell on a construction site, seriously injuring the woman driver of one of them. The storm hit St. Petersburg, the country's second city, as trees came down and buildings were damaged. Across the region, nearly 100,000 people had their power cut off. Forecasters warned that the storm front was heading for the Moscow region. Thunder, torrential rain and even hail are expected. The Russian capital's been suffering from a return of the poisonous smog aggravated by the fires surrounding the city. The government's mobilized emergency services to minimize the damage of the oncoming storm. Meanwhile, the authorities have sought to calm fears over the Sarov nuclear center. They say the main fires in the area have been put out and describe the level of radiation in the country as normal. An official website was closed at the weekend after it said the fires had released radioactive material. Kyrgyzstan government forces have been accused of helping civilian mobs attack Uzbeks during June's ethnic bloodshed. The organisation Human Rights Watch investigated the violence that followed the ousting from power of President Bakiyev. At least 370 people died and hundreds of thousands fled their homes in the south. The watchdog interviewed witnesses in several areas who said soldiers aided the pogroms carried out by ethnic Kyrgyz.
Peace protests in South Korea as Seoul and Washington launch their latest round of war games in the Korean peninsula. The demonstrators argue the military drills are fueling tensions with the communist north and angering regional power China. But officials say the exercises, which are expected to involve tens of thousands of US and South Korean military personnel, are defensive and aimed at better coordinating forces. Regional tensions have been high since the sinking of a South Korean warship, allegedly by the North in March. Speaking at a ceremony yesterday to mark the Korean peninsula's independence from Japan, the South's President Lee Myung-bak called on Pyongyang to improve ties and outlined a plan for eventual reunification between the two divided neighbours. But Kim Jong-il's regime remains defiant. It has threatened a merciless counterblow to the military games. Is it child cruelty or the sign of a healthy bouncing baby? Whatever your take, Japan's 400-year-old sumo crying contest is not about muscle. Considered beneficial for the toddlers, those who produce the quickest and biggest wail are believed to be in the best of health. He doesn't usually cry. I was very keen for my son to take part. I hope he'll grow up healthy. Held across Japan, in all some 70 babies fought it out at this contest in the northern city of Amori. But not everyone cries. The real toughies simply smile or just take a nap during the bouts.
Swedish fashion giant Hennes & Mauritz enjoyed sharply higher sales in July. The retailer, which is the world's third biggest in terms of turnover, said sales at stores that have been open more than a year were up 10% in the past 12 months as it reaped the benefits from an improving global economy. H&M also gained market share from its competitors. US rival Gap posted a 1% rise in same-store sales in July.
Life is a beautiful journey. Don't let AIDS kill it. Free future generations from HIV. If you sign up, we can make it happen on bornhivfree.org.
After months of speculation, U.S. Defense Chief Robert Gates has confirmed he will step down from his post next year. Gates was given the role in 2006 at a time when American forces were fighting in both Iraq and Afghanistan. He is currently overseeing a pullout of those troops from Iraq and intends to leave office just after a withdrawal from Afghanistan begins. 20 people have been killed in a road accident in Nigeria. It happened when a runaway truck crashed into several cars and exploded. Police say the truck's brakes failed as it was driving down a hill in Lagos on Sunday morning. The inferno caused traffic disruption for several hours on one of the country's busiest roads. More than a dozen Thai red shirt leaders have denied terrorism charges while appearing in a Bangkok court Monday. They're accused of leading anti-government rallies earlier this year in which some 90 people died. This includes the April 7th attack at Parliament House. A British Prime Minister will give his earnings to the Royal British Legion, a charity for British armed personnel and their families, army personnel, I should say. Blair says he will donate his advance of $7.5 million as well as any royalties. Britain's airports operator BAA is in talks with unions to try and avert potential strikes later this month, which could close the country's major airports. BAA says it will be forced to shut 6 of its airports, including London's Heathrow, if the walkout goes ahead.
The United States Navy says 4 commercial ships have been attacked while anchored near Basra in southern Iraq last week. Antiguan, North Korean, Syrian and American ships were targeted. The crews were robbed. Some of the crew's personal belongings were found during a search of boats nearby and 2 men were arrested. Well, on July the 28th, the Japanese oil tanker elsewhere in the Gulf was hit by a suicide bombing, according to the UAE security forces. The area is patrolled by U.S. Navy ships there to protect Iraq's valuable oil assets. Well, just a few hundred kilometers from where this attack happened are 2 southern oil terminals. The oil they pump worth 93% of Iraq's GDP. Well, 40% of the world's oil passes through these waters, so the Gulf is the most heavily policed waters in the world, with a strong U.S. presence. It seems Iraq is heading for more political instability. Talks on the formation of a coalition government between the 2 main political blocs have been suspended. The Al-Iraqiyya alliance of former Prime Minister Iyad Allawi says it has called off discussions with the bloc of Prime Minister Nour al-Maliki. It's been 5 months now since the election. A car bomb in Iraq in the province of Diyala has killed 5 people, 4 of them Shia Muslim pilgrims from Iran. The incident took place just north of the provincial capital of Ba'quba. The pilgrims were on their way to Shia shrines in Najaf and Karbala.